Sup, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today I figured I'd do something I haven't done for a while. At the end of my last video about Warcraft losing subscribers, I asked you guys a couple of different questions. I asked if you're still playing Warcraft, what keeps you subscribed, what keeps you playing, what do you still enjoy about the game enough to where you keep logging on and keep playing. And with any of these games, what do you really like and dislike about this current state of the game? And I think that this kind of comes to the territory about any of these like real talk, state of the game type videos. And also, if you've quit the game, what really caused you to quit, and to a lesser extent, what would really get you to come back. Now, what I'm going to be doing in this video is I literally got over 1,000 messages, responses from you guys on both YouTube and on Reddit. I've got about a 50-50, it seems, at least it looks like on my screen here, of YouTube comments and Reddit comments. I think that on Reddit, usually I get a little bit better, I guess, like quality comments, just because they have a better system for incentivizing quality content posting with like karma and everything. But I've tried to keep, a good amount of YouTube and Reddit comments, and so thank you guys very much, for supporting the video, of course, and also for really giving me this really great feedback. And I always enjoy doing this. I haven't done this, I think, since like my LFR video. Actually, it was quite a while ago. And ironically, this is kind of in the same vein in, I guess, like a tangential way. And so what I'm going to be doing in this video, if it's not obvious already, is I'm going to be reading off some of these comments that you guys left me, and we're going to have a discussion. And this is going to be the closest thing, I guess, I have to really a stream. I honestly thought that the announcement, I'm like a fucking idiot. I thought that the announcement was either today or Friday whenever I heard about it 2 weeks ago. And so I really don't know if I'm going to be awake or able to stream while the announcement happens. And it might be a little bit, this is just an aside, by the way, so I do apologize if you're not really interested in this. But I did say that I would stream the announcement. I didn't know that Blizzard was going to stream it on Twitch anyway. And so it seems kind of redundant for me to stream myself streaming them, And so I'll probably do maybe a later on in the evening stream about like a discussion about the new features and everything else like that. And so I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up with that, and apologize if anybody was confused if I was going to be streaming the announcement or not. As I said before, I was not entirely sure what the day was and everything else like that. So anyway, guys, I want to kind of get into this. This is probably going to be a longer video. I do apologize for that, but there's a lot of things that I really want to go over. I'm probably not going to go over every comment that I have here, just kind of the main ones. Now, this first one here is from Magical T-Rex. Look at TBC or even Wrath of the Lich King. Even once the new raid was put out, people still ran old raids because the gear was useful. I never realized it until he mentioned how long ICC was out, and I remembered pugging Nax, TOGC, OS, and even Heroics for Justice Point gear while ICC was going on. And then he goes on to talk about how LFR kind of invalidates the old raids, which is what I was really talking to you guys about in my previous videos, and really kind of what, the main points I have to get is that now, and there's another comment that really illustrates this even better than I kind of talk about it, is that LFR actually kind of removes content, previous content from the game. It's like you're not really going to, like what this guy said right here, leaving these beautifully scaled and balanced raids, and he's speaking about Blackrock Foundry and Highmaul, to be thrown out, for face roll free epics, which is like LFR or maybe Tana and Jungle Gear. And so one of the main problems that I have with these different catch-up systems and everything like that is that it doesn't really allow people, it basically invalidates all of the previous raid content. And so if you were to compare the difficulty of, let's say, LFR, Hellfire Citadel to, let's say, Heroic or even normal mode, BRF. BRF is going to be significantly more difficult in almost every single way, in terms of logistically, getting people together and then the fights themselves. And so, people are always going to gravitate to the easiest thing possible. And so I think that this really illustrates very well. And that's why this comment actually got a lot of upvotes. And, I really agree with this, is that, whenever you add in something like LFR or catch-up dungeons, LFR is just like an example here, catch-up dungeons that basically invalidate all of the previous raids, it is effectively taking that content out of the expansion because there's no longer an incentive to do it. And so that's the first one that I want to talk to you guys about. This is another one here, and this is, I'm trying to read about all this. So this is from Master of the Will. There's no journey, there's no challenge. They claim content doesn't last enough, yet they create these ridiculous click here to win. I like that idea there. catch-up mechanics to make the entire tiers obsolete on top of a heavy blanket nerf to the whole thing, which he means is like the, what was it called? Demotivated or something like that, demoralized buff, and like BRF, where like damage is like reduced by 20% and stuff like that. What's the point of nerfing BRF? No one is going to run it when they can get the same gear from brain dead methods, aka like LFR or Tana and Jungle Apexis farming. Then they wonder why content doesn't last. Don't make it irrelevant, for fuck's sake. That's pretty much my thoughts exactly about the whole subject. And it's really about like creating like that tiered adventure to where whenever you finish one raid or something like that, you have a different raid to go to. You have something new to move on to. Especially, this is a really big thing. Most people are, I would say, like really kind of they're like more serious players are not really in the tail ends of like just doing LFR or just doing Mythic mode. They're more in the middle of like heroic and normal, or normal mode and heroic. And the problem with that is that the difference between normal mode and heroic is basically a color palette of sword, we've talked about before, and also numbers. There's not really a whole lot of differences mechanically, and especially not graphically in terms of what the bosses do. There's no real added challenge except for higher numbers and the difference between normal mode and heroic, which is one of the main reasons why I think that those two difficulties really should be consolidated in one way or another. And so after that, he says, whenever I was playing vanilla, I heard nobody, casual or hardcore, complain about things being too hard or too inaccessible. Now, I do want to say right now that I have a pretty good memory, and I remember reading the forums back in vanilla. People complained all the time that it was hard to get tier 2, that it was hard to get in the molten core. The complaints have not really changed throughout the entire years. A lot of people did complain about it, but the complaints were more or less disregarded, or they weren't really taken as seriously because people had other things to do. Now, because everything is kind of centered around raiding, if somebody's not really able to do raiding, they have no real way to advance their character. And so Wizards kind of put themselves in this catch-22 situation where they kind of have to, make raiding accessible for a lot of people, because raiding is the only way that those people can advance their character, and advancing your character is one of the main draws and points of an RPG game. And so that's really kind of, one thing that I don't really like about it. And this is it's basic MMO design. You can't make everyone a winner and wonder why people aren't feeling satisfied in the long run. Now, I've said this a lot of times before, and it was actually funny that a lot of people actually mentioned something like this. And by the way, this is not just, a video of me jerking myself off with people who agree with me. There are a lot of dissenting and, I guess like arguments that are against what I'm saying, and I'd also even like to address those even more. So I guess like you guys can see where I'm coming from, and maybe it'll shed some light on the situation and advance the discussion further. And so anyway, this idea, I thought of this, okay? I thought of this about how, you could basically, a lot of people would want the gear mailed to them on a Tuesday, okay? Just mail me the gear every Tuesday and, we're going to be happy. And then I realized that if you do like your Garrison missions, they pop up, my Heimal and BRF missions, they pop up every Tuesday. It's basically the same thing as having the gear mailed to you. And so, realistically, it's almost like it's already happened. Here's the really bad news. They can't go back now. They tried it with flying, but everyone started bitching because they were too used to convenience. Flying is a different issue, and I might talk about that later on in this video. Same thing would happen if they decided to bring back a clear progression path. I'm not really entirely sure how true that is. I do think that if they removed LFR entirely, there would probably be a pretty big backlash, and I think that if anything, there should be a really strong transition from LFR, or at least a nudge by the developers to nudge people away from just like the queuing mechanisms and into player-driven and more, I guess, like emergent gameplay and content, rather than just things that the game is set up for people to do in the theme ride sense that I talked about before. And here's another one right here. It's from Michael D, and this is on YouTube here. Let's be real here. Blizzard gave the middle finger to thousands of 10-man guilds that reformed after Cata release. This is actually one of my guilds that this happened to, and in the beginning of Cata, I'll explain that in a second. These were groups of friends that could no longer progress through heroic. They just don't have any other means to progress without leaving their guild, so they simply opted out. A great game needs a great story, and a great story requires an even greater villain. Lich King is the perfect example. He is evil, and I will actually disagree entirely, not entirely, but a little bit with the Lich King. Maybe the essence of the Lich King is evil, but the tragic hero with Arthas and everything is actually what I think made him even more of a compelling character than just his pure evil in terms of his personification as the Lich King. Pandaland had what? Yeah, emotion bosses? What? WoD had orcs, and let me tell you, orcs are not scary. I don't know about that. If I fucking saw an orc, I'd be running the other way. Don't get me started on PvP designed around stuns, CCs, silences, and interrupts equals joke. Now, PvP has always really been centered around, I guess, like doing some sort of control to the other team to land a kill. That's been the same since season one, really. In Mists of Pandaria, I mean, it was really kind of at an all-time high with CCs and stuns and interrupts, and I do think that a lot of the changes that they made in Warlords of Draenor to kind of lower the amount of CCs was good, but also they've seemed to homogenize a lot of the classes, and that's also kind of it's kind of been like a trade-off in a way. I do agree with this 10-man guilds thing, and I did talk about this a little bit in my previous video, which had to do with like basically, like back in Burning Crusade, this is probably my best example that I have, is that in Burning Crusade you had like Karazhan and ZA, and ZA was actually a pretty difficult raid, and for any group that were outside of I guess like tier 6 or tier 5, late tier 5 content, doing a bear run was very challenging, and so it gave a clear path of progression for even 10-man guilds. And having a 10-man guild is not really always a bad thing. I do think that, sorry, I had Wendy's earlier, apparently. Sorry, I'm having it again. Anyway, the whole thing with 10-man guilds is that of course like Blizzard gave people more than enough time to get up to 20 people, but 20-man raiding, like 40-man raiding, like the real difficulty in 40-man raiding was getting 40 people. 25 people, the main challenge of that was really making sure that everybody logged on, preventing drama, and more like kind of HR, human resources management issues, rather than actually playing a game, which is one thing that made Warcraft very different, which is why I really kind of like the whole larger raid atmosphere. It kind of created more of a community and an environment. However, some people just said groups of 10 man. My old guild, we all came back together at the end of Wrath of the Lich King. We were able to kill Heroic Lich King at the end, and we moved into Cataclysm. And because T11 was very hard, the entry level bosses were very difficult for 10 man. The guild ended up falling apart because we really just couldn't compete, and we couldn't move up to that 25 man. And so I can really kind of identify with and empathize with what Michael's saying here, is because it was really kind of hard, and that players, guilds don't really have that way to move up, and also the 10-man versions of a lot of these fights, like Blackhand chooses 3 impale targets, I believe, depending on if it's 30-man or 10-man, and there are a lot of things that are set, and so the more people that you have, the easier you can handle a lot of mechanics, and usually it doesn't really go the other way, and so the 10-man versions are in a lot of ways mechanically more difficult than the 30-man versions, and so I do hope that they bring back some smaller scale progression that groups of friends and more tight-knit guilds can progress on and still feel like they're doing something worthwhile. This next one's from Mike S. It's going to be honest, I unsubbed when they announced no flying. Then I redubbed for a month when they announced they would add flying after all. I have allowed that month to expire since there is still no flying. I just have zero trust in Blizzard to ever follow through with what they say anymore. Now, I think that the flying thing, like you guys might not know, but I was really pro anti-flying, or very anti-flying, I guess. Before Warlords of Draenor came out, I thought it would kind of get people more out in the world and everything like that. And I do think that it fulfilled that purpose in the beginning of Warlords of Draenor. Now, after people kind of did all the things that were in the outdoor area, there was no real reason for them to go back out into the world, and so they didn't. I don't really see why flying would be bad for the game now. I think it should be added back into the game now, and that is something that I've read a lot on different forums. Is that people were kind of frustrated because Wizard said it would be a matter of weeks and not months whenever 6.2.1, which is a flying patch, would be released onto live servers. And I just read today that it's a possibility. It's probably going to happen really soon, but they sure have taken a lot of time, and I kind of hope that they do it quickly, because it's kind of frustrating for people for it to be over a month for them to make this change. And I know that there have to be there are graphical and technical things that they have to do, but it does seem like, for something that's, caused this much of a disturbance, I guess, in the community, that it would be addressed in a more in a quicker manner. And so anyway, I don't really think that many people unsubscribe because of flying. I remember seeing some like hashtag like no fly, no sub, and I don't really, I honestly thought it was like kind of silly, the whole thing. And I looked it up and it had like 500 uses or something like that on Twitter. And so anybody that said that this had any effect at all is crazy. Like nobody really used that, and it really didn't have a lot to do with it. A lot of people were really like what really kind of I guess like turned people's opinions on this is whenever they said that you were never going to be able to fly, which is really kind of what bothered me. Just looking and wow, this video is already getting pretty long. Okay, PvP are here, and I do want to say right now, I do apologize in the previous video that I did. I didn't really talk too much about PvP. Let's just do a long story short. I think it's fucked. Okay, like we're on the same page. All right. And so anyway, I just want to say that right now. Like, trust me, I get you. All right, I've done some PvP, and it's been frustrating. Some of it's been fun. Some of it's been frustrating. Okay, this is from Narsty Hobbitses. PvP are here, but a casual when it comes to raiding and other PvE content. At first, LFR was cool. It gave me a way to see the other side of WoW that stopped being interesting to me, but then it became a requirement in order to progress to normal mode raids. Actually, I had the mode there. That is something that I did want to talk to you guys about. The whole idea of like having to do something and it being required, and I always try and use that stuff in like air quotes or quotes and whenever I'm typing, is because of course it's not really required, but whenever you have something that's going to clearly put yourself at an advantage and then you don't do it, there's obviously something that you really could do that obviously could help you and get you, I guess, like advance your character more. And so whenever people are looking for other people to join in pugs or stuff like that, they're always going to take the people who put more effort and more work into their character, especially whenever it shows up numerically with item level and just DPS. And so whenever they announced LFR, it made it seem like a way to experience content for extremely casual players. Now we all get to kill Garrosh, yay. But the gear they put in basically made doing dungeons and heroics obsolete, and a lot of people became forced to do it instead of being a fun little option. As you said, I miss Wrath of the Lich King train of gearing, where you progress through normal mode dungeons, then heroics, then normal modes, and then normal raids. I'm talking pretty fast, I do apologize. Onto heroic raids. That was still viable for casual PvEers by myself. It just took a little bit longer, but I didn't seem to mind. I became friends with people in my guild who were in the same situation, and when we had gear from farming dungeons, most of us moved on to raiding together. I miss those bonds that you don't see and you don't see them anymore. Someone else in this thread phrased it pretty well when they said servers and guilds were a lot more like communities. The LFD tool took away from that a little bit. You could still get groups for dungeons together and with guildies and whatnot, but whenever they threw LFR, then man, that just killed the community feeling entirely. I wasn't always a solo player, but now I have these tools to basically solo queue through content without ever having to interact with people on my server and in my guild. People are expected to gear themselves almost completely through these solo tools and before they even get considered to join these high-end guilds, so it's no wonder why they feel alienated from other players. WoW has turned this has turned into a bit of a rant. I'm sorry, haha. And I think that really the main point that I want to get into and talk about with this is that the last paragraph here, talking about people were expected to gear themselves almost completely through these solo tools, which is again, if you try and queue up for like a normal mode raid and you don't have LFR quality gear at least in one way or another, you're going to be declined because you're setting yourself and thus you're setting your group at a disadvantage. And so these people basically are forced into doing these solo queue methods in order to get into the group content, and I think that a lot of people don't like that. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, you had a lot of other ways to kind of make your first steps, and honestly, like doing Nax 10 was easier than doing LFR is now. It was extremely easy to do, same as like Nax 25, and that gear along with the the ICC 5-man gear and everything would get you good enough to get maybe TOC 10, then maybe do a couple of TOC 25, sneak your way in, and then maybe get into ICC 10, and then work your way up through there. And so now you don't really have that as much. It's a much more linear and more than just linear. There's a lot less steps involved in the gearing and progression process. And the funny thing is that Blizzard's actually created that. They remove content in the expansion by adding new content in, and I think that that's really kind of the main problem. And so the Wrath of the Lich King model I think was really, really good. I personally prefer the Burning Crusade or the Villain model of a player progression, but the Wrath of the Lich King model was also very good for me as well. Let's see. Oh, this one was interesting, and I did want to talk about this because this is something that a lot of people talk about. This is from NV Kyle Brown. The root cause of all the problems is player behavior. You can't get into a non-LFR raid unless you have the experience and gear from the raid already. No one has any tolerance for learning. Every raid must be perfect or we're booting people. We even boot people when the raid is perfect, but we don't like their DPS. I had a guildie complain yesterday about not getting a res after a fight. The raid he was in, non-guild, was expecting him to just run back. Slows the raid down too much to res people. Well then, I guess Wizard can just nerf the res skills now since we aren't doing that anymore. It always comes down to people treating each other like crap. As the subscriber base drops, we seem to be losing the nastiest people last. The ranks of kindly people were dwindling fast. Now, I think that there is an element of truth in this, but I do think that also this is a lot of, like, I guess, a confirmation bias. Whenever I've joined groups on my alts, and so it doesn't have, like, I don't have, like, name recognition from, like, Asmongold and, oh, you know, I know you, I watch your videos, or something like that. I just join a group on my alt. Nobody knows who I am. I've never really had any of these bad experiences. You know, I just came in there, I did my job. Now, have I had bad experiences? Yes, of course. I've never had a time where people refused to res me because it would slow people down. I think that that would be more, you know, that I've never really had that happen. Now, I can easily see some dickhead doing that, okay? Easily see somebody saying that, but at the same time, it doesn't really seem like to be too much of a stretch that you should be able to, you know, like run back anyway. It seems like kind of both people are at fault there. I do also want to say that, you know, I don't think it's really Blizzard's responsibility to police and control player behavior, and people always have the freedom of and from association with each other, and so people should be able to decide who they want to group with. And if this is really true, and this is such a I guess like a systemic and you know, constant problem, it seems like if you were to make a group that didn't require these things, you would be able to find a lot of other people who had the potential to play well but didn't have the achievements, and you could still achieve and do things very well, which is what my experience is personally. But either way, I think that this is partially true, but I don't think that Blizzard should make things that kind of like you know, it's basically substitutes player behavior, or kind of like forces people to play with people who they wouldn't in the you know, on their own. I think that that's really kind of it doesn't really lead to a very good dynamic between players. And so this is one that somebody, I still play, sorry, my eyes are getting watery, I've been looking at the screen for a while. I still play the game because I love raiding, and I raid pretty hardcore, 11 of 13 Mythic as I post this comment, and progressing on Manaroth Mythic, and this is by Oyenum, I don't really know how to pronounce that. In my opinion, this expansion was a step up PvE-wise for me, as it allows me to play whatever alts I want to play without too much hassle. I absolutely hated VP capping every week in Mists of Pandaria scenarios, which led me to not playing alts. Now I feel like I have a reason to log on to each character I got to max level, to do the missions, daily crafts, etc. I enjoy the busy work of the game. Now, I think that the busy work thing, you know, with like the daily crafting things, I think that he would really kind of be in the minority of the people who enjoy having to log on every day to every character and do the missions and everything. Some people, I'm sure, do enjoy that. I personally don't really like it. And but what I really want to do with this comment is to show that there are some people who are enjoying the content, and who do enjoy Wards of Draenor, I guess, like in terms of PvE. Although I haven't really seen a lot of people who have enjoyed the PvE side or PvP side of it. And so, you know, with the Valor points, I think that Valor points, I didn't really like how it had a weekly cap on it. I really liked the Justice points, or the badges thing back in Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade, where you would just get like 2 badges from each boss, and however many bosses you could kill in a week, you know, that's what you could do. It wasn't really like you had to get every single badge or you had to get every single thing. It was just get as much as you can and, you know, progress. It was a much more relaxed, because there were just so many different ways to get them. And so I do think that if they add back a global currency like that, that they should do it differently than they did with Valor points in Mists of Pandaria. I think that some of these things, like the VP thing, and also with the legendaries, I think that the legendaries later on in the game, you know, like right now, and also in Mists of Pandaria with the ring and with the cloak, you know, they've turned from a reward for raiding, and they've turned into being a requirement for raiding, and I think that that has not really done anybody any favors, and it's kind of taken the reward away from legendaries and made them more of a necessity and a commodity, which kind of waters it down. It makes it not feel as special. I wish that the legendaries only drop from some sort of last boss or something like that, but you know, at the point that you get the legendary, it just helps you complete the content faster rather than you need the legendary to complete the content in the first place. this. So anyway, okay, yeah, this one is from Professor Skittles, and okay, why is that wrong? Like, honestly, what's so awful about being able to not being able to access particular bosses? This mindset that there can be no exclusiveness as WoW is what's damaged the game so much. Like, I never got to Yogg at current tier, and that's okay. I didn't raid enough and gear up for it. I didn't have the patience to learn mechanics. So what? People have fond memories of those places because of their exclusivity. You feel much more rewarded when you gain access instead of, oh yay, I'm running the same raid but with more mechanics. It's not as memorable or as interesting. Now, I think that you guys, if you've watched enough of my videos, you'd know that I pretty much am. I feel pretty much the exact same way. The exclusivity of like Nax 40 or of Sunwell, or especially like Black Temple, or getting to the Frozen Throne. That's why you saw so many screenshots next to Illidan and next to Arthas, and you don't see as many screenshots next to Blackhand or Imperator Margok, just because of how easily and how accessible they are. There's not really a whole lot of reason, or even Garrosh, there's not really a whole lot of reason to think that, oh wow, I want to capture this moment, because you didn't really do anything to earn it, and so because you didn't really work for something, it can't necessarily have an intrinsic reward. The exclusiveness in the game, I think, has always like kind of been a real driving factor for a lot of people that kind of keep going and keep moving up in the game and work harder and everything. For some people it's not, and for some people it is. I think for the people that are going to end up playing the game for 10 years, it is. But again, I think that like there's always a balance. There's always a balance. Raid shouldn't be just too ridiculously hard. I do think that Mythic right now is too hard, honestly, and for a lot number of technical reasons, not necessarily, oh, I think it's too hard. My guild killed Mythic Gorfine today, and so we're doing pretty well, 3-night guild, and so it's not like we're really having any trouble, but I do think that Raid should be a little bit easier just because of all of the other technical issues like disconnects, like having somebody bring their friend in. It seems a little bit too tightly tuned. I know that's anathema for some people, especially other high-end raiders, but that's just my opinion. Okay, this one is more of a positive thing. I'm still enjoying the game. I tend to play a lot more Soul than I do with friends. And this is from Pyro Blitz Plays. So he enjoys the game. Not really a terrible fan of the Facebook mobile style Garrison missions, although it's nice not having to go out and farm all my crafting materials. It's still a large part of the game that they butchered, I guess, and that's kind of the way that I feel. Of course, it's more convenient to just go into your mine that has all of these conveniently placed, little mines that you hit, and there you go. That's all your stuff, and it's easy. But I don't really think that that's very good for an RPG type game. And so, more convenience does not necessarily mean, something is better. And also, I want to say something else, is that more people doing and experiencing content doesn't necessarily mean that that content is successful, or the more people that do something is not a direct correlation to how successful or how good some feature or something is. Take for example, a lot of people don't like garrisons at all, but the shipyard, well, I would say that almost everybody, most people that I've talked to would not be doing the shipyard unless it was required for the legendary quest, and so they made it required. And so saying that participation equals success is not a very good way to determine things. And so anyway, this next one here is from Ronin Chaos. They really need to scale leveling. Everything is funneled into getting max level as quickly as possible, and everything is adjusted to that. They create a world that's easy to deal with for old pros, but offers very disjointed experience for new people. And now I think that this is there's the rest of this content also has a lot of good stuff in it, but we've already kind of talked about that. But this leveling process is something that I've really wanted to talk about, and also how the game has been catered more to people who have already been playing the game rather than new people. And so instead of creating a good experience for people who are coming into the game, they've tried to facilitate and I guess nurture the experience of people who are already playing it. And whenever you do that, you're kind of already trying to, people always quit and come in, and it should be easier to make that churn happen rather than preventing people from quitting. I don't really think that's a very, obviously it doesn't really seem like it's been doing very well in terms of player retention. And so I do think that they do need to do more things to make, new players coming into the game feel the same, I guess the same idea of the grandeur and the adventure and the excitement of the game that maybe we might have felt back in Burning Crusade or whenever we started playing the game. And I think that's really very fundamental to get people hooked on, whenever they come into the game. And whenever you come in and you're just two-shotting all the mobs at level 5 and level 10 and level 20, it's not really very fun. Honestly, it's really not very fun. You don't have to interact with anybody. You're just running around killing wolves. Like, I'm not really very surprised. I wish Blizzard. I guess they must have like a thing where like what people like whenever people buy the game, like what level they get to before they quit. And I hope that they use that information and really kind of tailor the leveling experience to that. Making things, as I said, making things more convenient does not necessarily always make them better. And so let's go to the other ones. Now this is another one that was kind of like in a way disagreeing with what I was saying, but also it's something that I do kind of have to address a little bit. This is from Sailor Mint, and this is on Reddit. You ran Kara because it was the best source of badges and one of the few sources of gear available. Guilds that had T6 access didn't touch T5 outside of keying new people. Oldor was made completely obsolete by TOC, and that was also widely regarded as a bad decision because many guilds had not completed Old War and finished Old War at all, and TOC had already been released, and then it already gave this better gear. And so I think that that decision of releasing TOC so quickly after the Old War release was regarded as a bad decision by a lot of people. It was made obsolete by TOC, which in turn was replaced by ICC. And content gating is the only reason why it didn't happen immediately on the release. And you guys remember how the different wings of ICC didn't come out on time. People didn't touch Naxx Old War after ICC came out because you could get 632 and 651 from gear and badges. While that is partially true, and I do think that they should make things throughout the expansion to kind of make it a little bit easier to gear up, like they did with Timeless Isle and some other stuff like that, like Magister's Terrace and Burning Crusade and everything. I think that like the tier 6 access didn't touch tier 5 outside of getting the vials and the keys for new people to get into Black Temple and everything. There has to come a point where you finish the game. And I think that that's one of the problems with like all of the Warforging gear and everything like that, is that there is no real, you never really can actually beat the game. And back then, you finally got through everything and you killed Illidan and you're done. You beat the game, you beat all the content, and that's it. There's such a small amount of people who actually were able to do that. It still was, still an experience the entire way through. 99%, probably easily 95% of guilds never killed Illidan in Burning Crusade, or at least not before 3.0, whenever they made it a lot easier. And so, while I think that this is like kind of an issue, and what he's really kind of saying here is that going back to old raids is not a new concept. Not going back to old raids is not a new concept. While that is true, there were still more incentives to do it, and also new players were able to move up through the different raids rather than just repeating the same one. And so, I think that this is like partially true, and especially with like Naxx and Old War being outdated whenever they brought out the ICC 5-bans. I didn't really have like a whole lot of opinions on that, just because the 232 gear that dropped from the 5-bans didn't fill out every single slot, and so if you did actually want to get geared out, you probably did have to do some Naxx, some OS, maybe an Old War run or something like that. But you could get some gear from the ICC runs, and so I think that this is partially true. But also there are some good things about not having to run old content. Eventually you have to, I guess, like beat the game. And I think that in Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade, beating the game, killing Illidan or doing something like that, gave people a lot more closure than beating the game now does. And so the next one here, this is a short one from Suplum. Okay, look, all right. I honestly think that the lack of PvE currency is the biggest detriment to my personal enjoyment for this expansion. I haven't even run any of the 5-bans other than the 5 that are required for the legendary questline because I feel like they're a waste of time. So he's basically saying that he likes the badges of justice, and I think that almost everybody's kind of on the same page there. I really do hope that they bring back some sort of valor points. The badges were my favorite type of global currency, and so I really hope that they do bring something like that back. I think LFR should have its own raid. That I'm not really going to talk about that too much. Wow, Marcus, still subbed. I only play Heroic and Mythic, doing PvP for cool elite gear, doing challenge modes for Mog items, and doing casual arenas or Ashran because it's fun for me. When I finish or don't have things above to do, I play CS:GO or LoL or some other single player game. Now I do think that there is some validity in this. Is that Blizzard can't necessarily make content for people who are going to play 8 hours a day. You're going to run out of content. And so could be good for some people who are burning themselves out to play another game and then come back to Warcraft and come back and forth. This is what WoW Marcus here does, is what I try and do as well. And, you know, like have that, what is the word really for that? Um, I guess like the back and forth, like going from, you know, like Warcraft to another game. I used to do that a lot more than I do now, but I still do that now. And I play like I was playing like The Witcher 3 with my buddy, and Diablo 3. I think you guys know about that, and just a lot of other things. That Path of Exile and other games. You know, whenever Warcraft has become boring for me in the past, I think that it's good to, you know, switch it up a little bit. And so this one, okay, so this one is from Zextion Hunter. As for the friend topic, I agree. I played a different MMO for like 4 or 5 years and I made no friends, and the only reason why I stayed for so long is because it was my first MMO. But after I got sick of questing, going to the PvP area all by myself, I joined WoW because I hear that people made loads of friends. But I, by the way, joined WoW this year during War to Draenor, and so this is a new player. This is a new player experience, which is something that I'm always interested in hearing about. I didn't make any friends. Things were easy to kill with heirlooms, etc. I felt like I was playing my old MMO. The point I'm making is that it seems hard for me personally to find and make friends to play with. I think that this is something that a lot of people are encountering, and that's why I really wish that they would kind of bring back what I talked about with the nudges, you know, things to kind of facilitate social behavior, because it could be hard for some people to go out and make friends normally, like maybe I would be able to, or you would be able to, and sometimes having those little things that help them out, you know, like kind of you know, like it's like basically like having like Tinder for people who like to play MMOs. Basically, you know, it's just like one thing that like connects people, helps connecting with those other people just a little bit easier. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here's one. This is from a random string of numbers, and that's, you know, it's literally, it's like 0, 5, 0, 8, 2, 1, 2, 0, 15. I couldn't commit to a schedule during Wrath of the Lich King and lagged behind a tier or two the entire expansion during Pugs. I had zero problems with that. I built a network of friendly Puggers and tried my best every other weekend. This is actually exactly what I did. My GDKP runs were on Saturday, and I was there every Saturday. But besides that, I just didn't have time to raid. You know, I don't get why people can't just play at their own pace and need to be catered to the point of having developers changing their fucking diapers. Winning isn't fun if everyone is a winner upon logging in, and I think that that's really kind of an element that I've talked about a lot, which is like having people, you know, giving people that sense of reward, and developers can create avenues to where players can pursue that sense of reward, but developers cannot necessarily give that sense of reward to players, which is why I hope that they introduce new avenues in this new expansion that's going to come out, I guess, today, whenever I release this video, for players to feel like they're really rewarded, like they really did something, you know, everything like that, like they really got something out of it. You know, they put in work, you know, day after day, and they finally got something out of it. And, you know, I think that that will make people feel a lot better. And I'm going to kind of go through, let's see, this video is getting kind of long, and so I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker just because I don't want it to be too long. Overall, I agree, except with professions. Previously, profession progression was pretty useless. You could grind a rep with a faction in a raid to craft raid level gear with crafting mats to drop in a raid. Now in War to Draenor, I can keep leveling up my neat weapons and armor to stay relevant instead of spending all that gold or time just to replace it when the next patch hits. Sure, the ease that you can gather mats is pretty absurd now. I think pretty much everybody's on the same page with that. But the overall, as someone with blacksmithing, leatherworking, and engineering, I would really, really like to keep the stuff with like my goggles and gear, have them gear up with me. I totally agree. And I think that one of the coolest things about Burning Crusade is that, you know, you had different specializations as a blacksmith. Like an example of this is that you started out, you know, if you're going to make the sword, or let's say the hammer, you started out with the thunder, okay? And thunder was just like basically a Karazhan weapon, like a 5-man heroic epic weapon or Karazhan level weapon. Okay, and you were able to make this as a blacksmith. It took a lot of work and it took a lot of effort, but whenever you made it, you got a lot out of it, okay? After you made Thunder, you were able to get crafting materials from the heroics and everything, and put those crafting materials together and reforge Thunder into being Deep Thunder, okay? And Deep Thunder was an amazing weapon. It was better than a Karazhan weapons, and it actually started to really mean something with your you're gearing up and moving up with your progressions. Progression and professions, and that's really kind of what I mean. And then after you had Deep Thunder, you could go into SSC or TK and get the not primal, those Nether Essences, I'm not sure what the name is, and combine Nether Essences and a couple of other items with Deep Thunder to turn that into stormhearld, which would actually be a pretty good weapon even going into tier 6 content. And so you were able to do that even in Burning Crusade, but I don't really like the way that they do the upgrades now, because the name doesn't even really change for the gear. The look of it hardly changes at all, and it doesn't really seem like you're doing anything except for increasing the item level. In Burning Crusade, whenever you got like your next weapon, like whenever I got mine, like I'll tell you something right now, I have a screenshot of myself crafting Thunder, Deep Thunder, and Stormhearld, okay? Like every single one of them. I really love doing that because each one of those steps took a lot of effort, it took a lot of time, but it was really, really worth it in the end. And now it just seems like it's an item level increase, and I just don't really have fun with that. So I agree with this a lot. I don't really like the way that professions were changed, and I think that really it kind of took the flavor out of professions. And now it's just kind of like very, it's like unless this is like being used for progressing yourself in a raid, it probably doesn't exist as a profession item anymore. Whereas like in vanilla and stuff, you were able to make like a robot duck or something like that as an engineer, and all these like cool little quirky things. And I kind of saw a lot of those things go away in Warlords of Draenor, and that's really kind of the main thing that I don't really like professions. I guess they took like the soul and the heart out of professions, and it's just now your profession is like, you make plate armor, you make leather armor, you make, cloth armor. It's not the same, you feel less like a blacksmith, you know what I mean? And it's like every single time I made one of those weapons, I stood on top of the great anvil and iron forge to do it because I thought it was really, really cool because I felt like a blacksmith doing it. And, again, like that's really kind of what I mean with professions. So I do really like the idea with having your weapons level up with you in a way, just not in the way that they're doing it now. Let's see. This one is from Askalots. Main reason that is why I quit is mainly because of the fact that everything went repetitive, the fact I felt really sheltered from everyone else, and the way that you had to grind the Garrison as if it was fucking Farmville. While I could ramble on for hours about the raiding and how everything feels too convenient, the only reason why I have been considering a return is because it has been my guildies and just the friends. And so there's a lot of other stuff in this comment, and this is from, again, Askalots on YouTube, that's really also makes a lot of sense. But these is like the two main things I really want to talk about here. Is that, of course, like things being repetitive. We've talked about, like the 4 raid difficulties and everything, and now we have 3 different dungeon difficulties as well, normal, heroic, and mythic, which is, I can kind of defend that because there's no reason to do heroic anymore. And also here, the reason why this guy is coming back to the game, the one reason why this guy is coming back to keep playing Warcraft is because of his friends and his guildies. And so if he didn't have that, and he probably created those, those connections before a lot of these other things to add convenience in the place of social interaction were added into the game. And so without that, he wouldn't be coming back. But because he has that, he's coming back. And so that's really something that I have a lot to say. I have had a lot to say about. One thing that you didn't touch on, which is one of those things that I feel that I've been saying for years, is merging realms. Now, honestly, I don't really know what they should do. I don't, and this is by Abdulion, I think. Should they combine all of the realms into one? Should they do server merging? I think they should merge some servers. The cross realm thing, it doesn't really feel like you're on the same realm, because I just don't really feel like it does. I wish they would merge a lot of the smaller realms, and I think that the fact that you're kind of set out at at a disadvantage because you're you're on a small server or something like that. I think that that's really, really shitty, and Blizzard really needs to do something about that. And so I do think they need to do something similar to merging realms. If merging realms isn't the solution, I don't really know what is, but they should do something, and I honestly don't know what they should do. Here's one that no one can ever explain. Now, this is one that's critical of my opinion on, this example is LFR. Here's one that no one can ever actually explain. How does one person's ability to see in-game content in LFR negatively affect your ability to see in-game content on Mythic? In what sense is that taking away from your ability to do Mythic mode? Now, more of this is basically the same thing, but I think that that's a good point, and I do want to talk about that. Personally, it doesn't matter. it doesn't. It doesn't. It just doesn't. It does take away from the mystique, and it's like I was on the frozen throne and you weren't. That matters for a lot of people. That matters. Okay, like I mean, like we have to acknowledge to an extent human nature. Okay, I think we do have to acknowledge human nature, and that is a big driving force, and exclusivity and envy and being better than other people is a huge driving force for a lot of people to play games. Okay, that not saying that it's not would be again just kind of denying human nature. But what I'm really saying in these videos, I try to speak from not my own personal perspective, and obviously it's hard to do because I am me, right? But what I really try and talk about with these videos is that I don't really think that these LFR and a lot of the other features that they've added into the game, like getting gear from Garrison missions and stuff like that, I don't really care about me. I don't think that it's good for the game as a whole. I don't think that it's healthy for an MMO, especially a subscription-based MMO, to have a certain mode in the game that allows you to complete the game within a week of reaching max level. I don't think that it's very good in terms of retaining players, and I don't think it's very good in terms of getting people involved and really feeling like they earned it, or giving people that sense of reward that is really what keeps a lot of people playing the game. And so anyway, I think that I'm just going to go through a couple more. I'm just checking the time. Oh boy. Okay, yeah, we're going to kind of wrap this up real quick because this one is from Coggin on Reddit. Because it's cheaper to make different difficulties and more raids. It's a lot about the money. Sadly, I think that's really true, and that's one thing that's disappointing, is that there isn't really a whole lot of incentive to make new dungeons or something like that when you can just scale up the old ones. It's definitely easier, and so it's not a surprise that it keeps happening. I really hope that they focus more on treating people like players, and as I said before, I said that they focus more on kind of keeping people playing the game rather than improving the playing experience, and I think that this is a good indicator of that. And I don't really like the whole idea that, all they do is care about money now. While that could be true, it could not be true. It really kind of depends, but I don't really know entirely. But yeah, this is something that is really kind of an issue. Whenever you can just scale it up, LFR, fills the void. It fills the void for making new heroics. You don't need to make new heroics if you just have LFR, and just replace LFR with Mythic dungeons. That has nothing to do really with LFR. It has to do with scaling up any content in the place of making content that is engaging instead. And so okay, I think that this one is I'm just going to click through a couple of them. Okay, might be the last one. I'll click through it after this. This is from Collected One, and they changed to reflect the changing player base. Back in the day, you could rely on big guilds. What this person's really saying. Times change, people grow up, they get jobs, they have kids, guilds shrunk in size, raids are harder to form, players don't have hours every night anymore. And so they adapt. Now, what I really dislike about this mentality is that I believe that catering to an aging player base is synonymous with catering to a shrinking player base, which is what we're seeing happening. I think that what would be really good is if they yes, there's one more thing I was going to talk about. Thank God I remembered. There's really kind of a problem whenever you kind of just try and keep the same people playing, the same people playing, the same people playing, and eventually people are going to quit just because they just grow tired of the game. People are going to grow out of the game, really, I think that no matter what, at some point or another. And so I think that the more importantly than keeping people in the game is to keep people coming into the game, and keep people having those experiences rather than kind of people, hey, do you remember this experience? Do you remember this experience? And kind of catering to new players, and making sure new players have the good experiences rather than making sure old players are still able to feel like they're part of the game. While you can do both of them, I think there are some times where you really do kind of have to pick one or another. And from a game design perspective, it seems like they've catered more to keeping people in the game rather than actually letting the game move forward on its own. And so anyway, this guy's talking about RNG. I think that a lot of people dislike that. This is more of a Wildstar. I think that Wildstar had a lot of different problems that didn't really have to do with anything specific. It wasn't just because the raids were hard or the attunements were hard. I think there were just a lot of other problems as well. This guy's talking about PvP, hates PvP. That's pretty much the same thing. And so anyway, I'm trying to find, there's one about, yeah, here it is. I think this is probably going to be the last one I'm going to talk about. This one is from Kayana Vasala Nana. I don't know. Cataclysm tried to appeal to hardcores with only the barest hint of casuals even existing, and now the plebs are allowed to play the old stuff 20% nerfs. It failed miserably, only for the devs to do a rapid about phase for 4.3 in a desperate attempt to stem the sub loss. You know what might reverse the decline? Getting rid of the concept of the raid tier. And and then he's talking about making all the dungeons, all the max level dungeons. Where yeah, making all the dungeons and raids up to max level. I think that would be kind of overwhelming for players. Maybe doing it like one at a time or something like that, kind of like the time walking dungeons, might be a way that would work, but I'm not entirely sure. And so anyway, what I do want to address is the reason that I believe that Cataclysm failed at the beginning of the expansion. One of the big reasons why I think that it did fail is that it didn't have the same Deathwing, like the bosses, there wasn't really that same drive to kill Deathwing and to kill Cho'Gall as Sinestra and Nefarian again, and Onyxia again. There wasn't really the same draw that there was to kill Illidan and Arthas, and so there was that, the lore perspective, and also, I think that there's a balance, and the best balance was in either ICC was probably the best time for Pug rating. I would say it was the best time quantitatively, obviously, since it had the most subscribers. It was the best time really for people to get into the game and be able to get into raids. Doing Bastion of Twilight or doing Blackwing Descent or Throne of the Four Winds, outside of doing Buried and Hold, which was like the Winter Grasp, just the PvP boss of the week, it was basically impossible for people to do unless they were a coordinated guild. The raids were too hard at the beginning of Cataclysm, but I don't think the solution to the raids being too hard is to make them too easy. I think that there was more of a better, I guess, like even point in Burning Crusade with Karazhan, and then with a little bit like Gruul's Lair and stuff like that. And I do wish that there was a larger raid. Like SSC was a little bit, I think, like too hard for like really casual groups. But in ICC or in Wrath of the Lich King, they had ICC and like Nax 25 where you could just go in there and face roll through it, whatever. And so, going from having this like very easily, very accessible pug rating environment to go automatically from Cataclysm to where there's basically no pug rating because it's just too hard. It was just too hard. And, for an average player, it was too hard for an average player. And that's why why it failed. It wasn't really because, and I do think that they appealed too much to hardcore players. There shouldn't be any specific audience that they should really only appeal to. And the problem is it didn't really have anything for the more casual pug players that the ICC environment had created. And so I think that's really why Cataclysm at the beginning lost so many subscribers. I think that we're pretty much let's see. Okay. So this is the one that I did want to talk about. This will be the last one, and I think this is the best closing thought here. This is by Leones, and he says, "It's funny we keep getting these content droughts, which developers respond by speeding up patches and making more content, but all that really happens is that they just make the content they already made irrelevant faster, leading to a vicious cycle that they simply cannot win." Vanilla was great, and at the same time my friend got me into WoW with starting progression into AQ, I was starting out into Zul'Gurub and Molten Core. Instead of having one relevant raid instance like we do now, I, as a new player, had 6 raid instances that were relevant, as well as half a dozen world bosses. I don't really think there were that many, but there were also like other things that he could do. The same thing occurred in Burning Crusade for a while into Wrath of the Lich King. If we look at the latest patch from a new player's perspective, everything in the Garrison besides the shipyard is completely irrelevant. Every daily outside Tan and Jungle is irrelevant. Highmaul and Blackrock Foundry are irrelevant. Normal and heroic 5-man dungeons are irrelevant. Challenge mode rewards are irrelevant. Every zone outside of Tan and Jungle is irrelevant. That's a lot of content pissed down the drain. It used to be whenever you bought an expansion, you were playing that expansion. And that content patch and the content patches simply added content onto the existing content. Now you're simply playing the patch that subtracts all the content prior to it. Honestly, like if I knew how to do Reddit gold, I would give this guy a gold star, because this is probably my favorite comment out of all of them, because it really kind of makes it's not elitist, it's not anything, it's not good for the game to outdate old content that quickly. And I think that this comment really kind of illustrates how many things that were made irrelevant just by 6.2 being introduced, and the new things that were being introduced with 6.2. And so anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed. I think that this was a little bit too long, personally, I think it was a little bit too long. But honestly, I think that we kind of covered a lot of ground, and I hope that people kind of got a lot out of it. There were a couple of comments I didn't really get to, and some of them really had a lot of, a lot of good points as well. But it was just, as I said, it was just getting too long. So I hope this, further discussion, hope this helped you guys, hope you enjoyed. And so again, let me know if you like this kind of video. If we're going to do one of these again, I might try and make it a stream. I don't really know if I will or not. But this would be pretty much what you could expect if I did do this as a stream. And so anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we all got something out of this. So thank you for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.